Okay, guys. So, if I, I just want to throw this out there at the beginning. If I seem a little scattered, I was not planning on speaking when I woke up this morning. John is sick, I'm pretty sure, and so he texted me and asked me if I could, and I didn't want to let the opportunity pass, and so here we are. We have this message. So, have you ever found yourself somewhere you never expected to be? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you thought, like, you ended up finding yourself and you just thought you never expected to be in that situation? When I was in junior high, like I said, I came to the Lord when I was in high school. When I was in junior high, I was a punk kid. If you grew up going to our junior high group on Friday nights and you heard me speak, you've probably heard me tell a bunch of stupid stories about me just doing stupid things, getting in trouble, all sorts of stuff. But there was one time me and some friends used to sneak out of the house at night, and we used to go egging, ding dong ditch, whatever. We used to do toilet paper at people's house, and there's this one guy in junior high that we loved to just throw eggs at his house, right? Because he would come out in his boxers with a baseball bat, and he's this like skinny little white kid, and it was the funniest thing every single time. And so we would want to get his house like often, and my best friend lived right near his house, and so we would always go. It was like every month we'd get him like one time or something, and so there's one time, right? It was earlier in the night, and so we snuck out. And we decided we're going to go egg this house. We walked to the 7-Eleven, grabbed 24 eggs, right? And we walked to his house, and we set up across the street. We get all ready right behind this car, and we open the eggs. We get the eggs in our hand, and we're like, all right, here we go. Ready, set, go. We throw these eggs, boom, boom, and it just like hits the window, hits the front door, right? There's 3 of us, right? So 6 eggs come flying, and then we grab the stuff, and we run around the corner, right? And we sit there, and we watch them. Same thing every time. Comes out with his baseball bat in his underwear, and he's looking, and he says a few bad words, and then he walks back inside. And we just laugh the whole time, and then we look down, and we have like 18 eggs left, and we're like, what are we gonna do? Right? We can't just let these perfectly good eggs go to waste. Like, we can't let them go to waste. And so we decided we were going to just get a random house. And so we walk down the street, and we see this house. And it's like the biggest house on the street, right? The driveway goes down a little bit, and it's like this beautiful garage, 2 stories, bunch of cars in the driveway, nice cars too. And we're like, that is the house, that one. And so we set up across the street, same thing, and we knew we had 18 eggs. We got to get them all. Right? And so we're like, all right, ready, set, go. And we start throwing. We're picking up eggs, and we're throwing them, and it's just hitting all over, like everywhere. All over the windows, all over the cars, all over everything, right? And we know, like, we don't have much time, and so we just start busting down the street, just getting as far as we can, right? And I probably get like 3 or 4 houses down, and I can hear them come out because they're yelling and saying bad words, right? And this lady's like yelling about her car and all sorts of stuff, right? And we're just laughing as loud as we can, right? And so we get a little bit further, and I look over, and I could see them getting into their cars, and I'm like, uh-oh. And so I immediately jump into a bush and just start hiding, right? And I'm hiding, and my friends keep running, and I don't know what happened to them. I'm assuming at that point they had jumped into the bush because the cars were coming after us, right? And so I'm hiding in this bush, and I am sitting there for a few minutes, or shortly after I get in the bush, I see the cars go by, right? It's one car driving real slow, right? Angry person in the front, the next car, 3 cars, and then some buff dude on a motorcycle is just like right behind them all. And I'm thinking at this point, like, I'm gonna die, right? Like, I'm not a very big person, right? And I just imagine me in 7th grade, right? Skinny little soccer player kid, and I just thought, like, this is it, right? This was the point for me where I found myself in a situation that I never expected to be in. You guys, and like this situation, right? Hopefully you're not in this kind of situation, but many times in life we find ourselves in a place where we never thought we would be, never expected to be. Because it reminds me of a story of Paul, and I'm going to be paraphrasing through this story pretty much the whole night. If you want to go and you want to review this, we're kind of jumping in. I'm going to start with a little bit of the background of the story, jumping in towards the end of Acts 21, and we're going to go like pretty much through the rest of the book of Acts, like 6, 7 chapters. And I'm going to paraphrase most of it because we don't have, I know you guys have school tomorrow, right? We can't stay here that long. And so Paul, we're going to jump in the story where Paul has been arrested by the Jewish leaders, right? He's been falsely accused for crimes that he didn't commit, right? And they're upset, they're frustrated at Paul because he's preaching about Jesus. And the Jewish leaders, they don't like that, right? And so they're trying to get him killed, right? But they don't have the authority to kill him, and so they're trying to get the Romans to kill him, right? Because they were the ruling authorities, right? And so Paul was in prison, right? In like he was arrested, he was in shackles, right? And he would have to go and give trial in front of these leaders, in front of these Roman authorities, right? And every single time, right, the Roman authorities didn't really see it fit to put him to death for this reason, right? And then for the false reasons, and so every time it would just get kind of pushed to the next one, right? Then Paul went from city to city, right? Every time a bigger authority, and finally they said that Paul, you're going to go to Rome, right? You're going to go to Rome and face trial in front of Caesar, right? And so Paul, as a prisoner, is on his way to Rome. He's expecting Rome, you guys. And I don't know if you've ever expected certain things in life. You guys, when I ask you to think of the future, what are the things that come to your mind, right? Some of you guys, hopefully all you guys actually expect to graduate high school, right? Hopefully, right? That's it. That's hopefully an expectation for life, right? So for some of you guys, maybe you know what trade you want to go in or where you want to go. Maybe you're hopefully expecting to have a career. Some of you guys are expecting to go to a college, maybe expecting to go to a certain college. Maybe some of you guys are expecting to play sports in college, right? But then we think about life after that, right? And you expect more things, right? Some of you guys, hopefully, right, expect to get married one day. Some of you guys expect to have a family. You expect to have a career and own a house, right? And all sorts of stuff, right? We have these expectations for life. You guys, and some of us, we expect to go through life. We have, it's just it's a weird it's a weird thing that a lot of us, it's very easy to think that we expect that if we do what God tells us to do, our life will be easy, right? We have this expectation that if we follow God and we try to do our best, that we it won't be that bad, right? Yes, let me tell you, if you do what God asks you to do, you do avoid some trials, you do avoid some storms in your life, right? You do avoid some of those, but sometimes storms, trials are gonna come, right? Paul was expecting Rome. He was expecting to go to Rome, right? And he had this expectation, not just because they told him, right? The people told him, you're going to face trial in Rome, but God came along and he also said, you are going to testify about me in front of Caesar in Rome, right? Somewhere Paul's always wanted to go, right? He didn't think it was going to be this way as a prisoner, right? But listen to this, Acts 23:11, it says, the following night the Lord stood near Paul and said, take courage, as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so must you also testify in Rome. Each of us have expectations. Each of us have expectations in life. You guys, but it doesn't always happen the way that we expect. You guys, and Paul was expecting a straight shot, right? He was expecting, right? He gets loaded up on a ship with a bunch of people, 250 people, right? Some of them are guards, some of them are people who run the ship, some of the people are traveling, some of the people are other prisoners, right? Just a bunch of people, 250 people load up on the ship. and they start heading towards Rome, right? And they were expecting to go to Rome, right? But it doesn't always happen that way, right? What happened was a storm came, right? And the storm, and it was funny because Paul actually he told them, like, we need to go over here because we're not going to make it through, and they didn't listen. But they ended up in the midst of like this crazy storm, and they're getting blown around back and forth, and they start to like take all their cargo and just start throwing it off the boat because to make it lighter, to help it float more, right? Because like water was coming in and the boat was starting to sink, and it was just getting crazier and crazier and crazier, right? It turned into like a hopeless situation where they're just throwing almost like everything that they could off the boat, all their food, all this, all that, just everything they could to make this boat not sink, right? But this boat was going down, right? And it was going down. And then Paul spoke to the crew at this point, right? Where it was like the most just it was a hopeless situation, right? And Paul spoke to the crew, everyone on board, and this is what he said. Acts 27, verse 21. It says, "Men, you should have followed my advice and not set sail from Crete, and thereby spared yourselves this damage and loss. And yet now I urge you to take up your courage, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only the ship. For this very night an angel of the God to whom I belong, whom I also serve, came to me, saying, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand before Caesar, and behold, God has generously granted you all those who are sailing with you. Therefore, keep up your courage, men, for I believe that God will turn out that it will turn out exactly how I told you.'" Right? So Paul tells these guys in the most hopeless situation to take courage, right? God said we're getting through this. Take courage, right? We just had a shipwreck just a few days ago, right? I work in the hospital, and so we get notified when like mass casualty incidents happen, right? And we ended up actually not getting anyone from the shipwreck, but I was working when it happened, or the morning of it happening, and they were talking about we were possibly going to get some people, but we ended up not. But to think about like a ship wrecking, did any of you guys see on the news like the damage that was done to those ships, right? To the ship. It was like there was like garbage and trash and all sorts of stuff all over the place, right? And to think about that, just like times like this boat is way bigger, right? That boat had, I don't know, like 30 people on it. This boat has like 250 plus people, right? This is a way bigger boat, way bigger vessel, right? A ton, like huge storm coming through, destroying this boat. And Paul says to take courage. To take courage. They lost their hope, right? They couldn't see a way out of their situation. And God told them to keep their courage when the ship was going down. You guys, and for some of us in here, right? I don't know you. I know some of you a little bit, right? But I don't really know you deeply. I don't know what thoughts are going through your mind. I don't know what's going on with your family or in your life. I don't know the situations. I don't know the trials. I don't know the hardships. I don't know the storm that is coming into your life. But what I do know is that God is a good God. And He's saying to take courage. He's telling you to take courage. Because if you have gone through the storm, if you've had something hard happen, right? You know it sucks, right? You know it sucks going through it. It's not fun. It's very easy to get discouraged. It's very easy to get depressed, to get suicidal, to have bad thoughts, to just let your sin just run rampant, just to give in to certain things, right? It's very easy in the midst of the storm to just let it take you. You guys, and let me tell you, like, take courage. Take courage. God would not put any storm in your life that you can't walk through, that you can't get through. God will help you through every single step, you guys. And it's hard to see that at times. It's hard to see that. And I'm not saying you're going to feel it in here. You don't feel it. You don't always feel it. Right? But take courage. Things don't always go according to our plans, blah, blah, I said that. You guys, when our ship is sinking, you guys, it's easy to let fear take over. I don't know if you've ever had if you ever had like a near-death experience, right? Sometimes people in like their car, like a car accident, right? They have this like near-death experience, right, where they're just like so freaked out, right? They're or whatever, any other situation. And it's so easy to let fear take over in those times. Because it's so easy to let your fear take over in those times. And honestly, like in those like near-death experiences, sometimes it's like honestly, like sometimes there's like nothing you can do, right? It's just like crazy situation, right? Like it's so easy, right? But let's talk about the aftermath of it, right? Sometimes there's PTSD, right? Sometimes there's different things that sometimes you'll just like always be afraid of that thing. My son is 5 years old, and he this is probably the closest thing to a near-death experience he's had. We have these stairs at our house, right? These like cement stairs. There's probably like 15 of them, right? And there was one time he was walking down them. He was rushing, right? And he falls and just boom, 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 right? And I'm sure it hurt, right? He was probably like halfway down, so he probably really only went down like 8 stairs, but still, right? He is so afraid of those stairs. Like every single time we'll be rushing, we'll be going, right? And he's 5. This happened probably like a year ago or whatever. And he's still, even today, he's like, he grabs the railing. He's just 1 step, 2 steps, right? And I'm always like, Nixon, come on, like we are in a hurry. Come on, let's go. And he's afraid. He's afraid. And when things happen, when we get hurt, right? It's easy to let the fear take over, and it's easy to let the fear to affect how we perceive life. It's easy. It's very easy. You guys, and when we talking about the fear that we have when we choose to not let people in, the fear that we have when we're so afraid about what others think that we're not going to do the right thing because you're so afraid about what so-and-so is going to think. The fear that you have that is stopping you from entering into what God has for you. See, when you feed that fear, it just gets stronger, right? Yes, but you can feed your fear, or you can feed your courage. Because God has given to each and every one of you guys. Each and every one of you, God has given you courage. God has given you the strength to walk through whatever situation that you're going through right now. You guys, if you're not going through a situation, right, like, no, you will, right? You will, I promise, right? We all go through trials. We all go through hardships. And let me tell you, if you've ever been to the point where you just feel like it's too much, where you feel like you're about to break, you guys, take courage. So this ship, it was coming over. Is that my phone, or is that one of you guys? It's probably one of you guys. That's one of you guys. My kids were having a hard time in the nursery, and so I got to kind of keep an eye on that. But this ship was going through, right? The storm came, and eventually it destroyed the ship, right? And they were decently close to some like random island, and so they all start swimming towards the island, right? And all of them, no one ends up dying, right? Which is pretty surprising, right? Because there's a lot of people on board. A big vessel makes a higher chance, right? They all get to the shore, and they all arrive at this place called Malta. You guys, raise your hand if you've ever been to Malta. Raise your hand if you've ever been to Rome. Anyone's been to Rome? Oh, nice. One person. I've never been to Rome. Malta. Who knows where Malta is? You don't know. None of you guys know where Malta is. I don't even know where Malta is. Malta is this tiny, tiny little island. Tiny little island in the middle of somewhere. I don't know. I don't even. I should actually probably have looked it up so I sound a little smarter. But it's some tiny little island out in the middle of wherever these people were sailing. But it was unfamiliar to them. They didn't know, like, they're coming on the shore, and there's these people there, and are they going to attack us? Are they going to kill us? Are they going to be nice? Who knows what's going to happen? And so they find themselves washed up on the shore of Malta, you guys. And if we think about where Paul is in this moment, right? He is first off falsely imprisoned, right? Having to face these trials to hopefully save his life. He gets thrown on this ship, right? He's expecting to go to Rome, ends up shipwrecked, right? And all this is happening because he is doing God's will, because he's doing exactly what God has asked him to do. And now he finds himself washed up on the shores of Malta, and this is what happens to Paul. In Acts 28, 3-4, it says, but when Paul had sorry, I skipped like 2 verses. They got to the shore, right? The natives actually were pretty nice. They greeted them, right? And they're like, okay, come in. Let's get you guys warm. Let's build a fire. Let's whatever. And so they start building this fire, and Paul goes, and he's just trying to like give a helping hand, right? And so that's where we're jumping in. But when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and laid them on the fire, a viper came out because of the heat and fastened itself to his hand. When the natives saw the creature hanging from his hand, they began saying to one another, undoubtedly this man is a murderer. And though he has been saved from the sea, justice has not allowed him to live. So Paul, think about this, right? To make matters worse, Paul is going and he's trying to help, right? And he throws this wood in the fire, and this viper comes out and bites him, right? Poisonous snake. You get bit by a viper. It's not like you can get like rushed to the ER and get antivenom, right? I've seen that before. It's actually pretty intense. But it's not like that can happen, right? It's just like, let's see what happens. You're probably gonna die, right? All of them were like, oh, like you're a bad guy, you're a murderer, right? I don't know where they're getting this from, right? But Paul's situation goes from bad to worse. It goes from bad to worse, and then to worse, and it just keeps getting bad. It just keeps getting worse, you guys, and each and every one of us, you guys, will go through a season, hopefully not, right? But we'll go through a season of struggle. We'll go through a storm. We'll go through a hardship where matters seem to get worse and worse, you guys. And to think about this last year and what's happened, right? Just to our we think about the economy, so many businesses shutting down, so many people losing their jobs, so that doesn't really affect you unless it was your parents. But let me tell you, someone's going to pay for this over the next 10 or 15 years, and odds are it's probably going to be you and me. But let's keep going. We are going to face storms. We're going to face trials. You guys, in this last season, maybe you lost a family member. Maybe someone died. Right? And I don't know, it's a tough season. It's tough. On top of that, all the fear and anxiety. You guys should see, in the ER, we get psychiatric patients, right? And before COVID, we didn't really get that many. Now we have so many people, and it's not even these people are. It's not even a lot of these people are actually crazy. It's just they're going through a crisis, right? And they're going through a crisis. They get depressed. They get suicidal, and then from a medical standpoint, they're unsafe to themselves, and so we have to have them evaluated by psychiatrists, all sorts of stuff. But numbers of depression, numbers of uh, suicide attempts and actual suicides have like gone through the roof over this last year. You guys, it is insane to see some of these statistics. You guys, in these situations that we can find ourselves in, it's tough situations. To finish my story, because I never actually finished. So I was hiding in this bush, right? I was in the bush, right? I know. There was one time I didn't finish the story, and some junior high kid came up after, and he was like, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" I thought it was like something about God, and he was like, "Whatever happened in the story?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And so I guess I gotta tell you, right? And so this situation, right? I'm hiding in this bush for like 10 minutes, right? Finding myself in a place I never thought I'd be, right? And I just think like, okay, I gotta move. I can't sit here forever. And so I don't know where my friends are. They're gone. I don't know if they got beat up or they're dead or whatever. And I'm just sitting here, and I think, okay, I gotta go. Once they pass, I'm gonna just jump into the next yard and try to get as far as I can, jumping over these fences in these yards until I get to the end of the street and get back to his house. And so I see the cars pass, right? 1, 2, 3, and then a motorcycle, boom. And then I'm like, all right, go. And I start, and I run, and I jump over like 3 fences, and then I see another car come, and I'm like, okay, I gotta hide. I'm just assuming they're all after me. And so I jump into this bush that's right next to this front door, or right next to a window of this house, right? And I'm hiding there, and this car's like literally just passing by, and this light turns on behind me. Poof. And I turn around, this old person just like yelling and screaming at me. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so I just like risk it. I have to move, right? And so I jump into the next yard, right? I jump into a bush, right? And then the cars pass again. 1, 2, 3. They didn't get me. And I sat there for a few minutes, right? And I'm like looking for my friends, hoping that like maybe they're doing the same thing I am, right? Maybe I can find them. And I sit there, and sure enough, this other car comes. And it's a cop, and he has their like little like spotlight out, looking through the bushes and all sorts of stuff. And I thought like, okay, I'm not gonna die, but I'm going to juvie. Like this is done, right? Like I'm like this is just getting worse, right? And I thought at that point like I'm really screwed. Like there's no way I'm getting away from a cop at this time, right? And in this situation matters, we're getting worse and worse and worse. I'm going to put it on pause for a second. You guys, and in life, you guys, it can get worse, you guys, but what we do in the midst of the storm, what we do in the midst of the situation is what's really important. You guys, I want to look at what Paul did. Actually, before I actually skipped a little part. I should scroll down before I keep going. I want to talk about having a certain perspective. Having a certain perspective. You guys, in the midst of a storm, it's very easy. If you've ever gone through the storm, you've probably asked this question: God, how could you allow this? God, how could you allow this to happen? God, how could you allow? I'm sure Paul I'm sure it was easy for him to think, God, what the heck? Like, how could you allow? First off, I'm in prison, and then shipwreck, and now I'm getting bit by a snake, right? How could you allow this to happen, right? How could you allow this person to die? How could you allow my grandmother to die? God, how could you allow this horrible thing that happened to me when I was young happen? I don't know if you ever asked that question. It's very easy. It's very easy to ask God, how could you allow this to happen? It's very easy to start pointing your fingers at God. But let's see what Paul does. In the next verse, it says, in verse 5, 28:5, it says, however, Paul shook the creature off into the fire and suffered no harm. You guys, he shook it off. He shook it off. You guys, and whatever that thing is in your life that's hurting, whatever that thing is, that's the frustration, the anger, you guys, shake it off. Right? The depression, those thoughts of hurting yourself, just shake it off. You guys, and let me tell you this, I'm not, when I say to shake it off, to get rid of it, I'm not saying to shake off the storm, right? Because if you can, get rid of the storm, right? Do whatever you need to do. But more often than not, when we have a hard thing that's happening in life, there's nothing we can do to remove the storm. There's nothing we can do, right? There's storms that if you do exactly what God calls you to do, from now on and forever, there's still going to be storms that come in your life. When I say shake it off, I'm not talking about the storm. I'm talking about the results, your thoughts. Right? I'm talking about your perspective in the storm, your perspective after the storm, the things that that you're allowing to fasten itself to you, and you're allowing it to poison you. Let me tell you, when you don't forgive them, that's what that does. When you choose to not forgive, even if it was a bad situation, even if they don't deserve it, it's just poison. You're the only one it's hurting. And believe me, I've walked through those situations. Whatever it is, you shake it off. Get the right perspective. See, Paul shook off the viper, and it went into the fire. And then the natives started pointing their fingers. This guy's gonna die. He's a murderer. And then all of a sudden, they saw nothing happen to him, and they had completely changed their perspective. Right? They completely changed it around. They were like, he's a god, right? And then Paul had the opportunity. He had the opportunity to speak about God. He said, I'm not. I'm sure he said something along the lines, I'm not God, but I know who is. Right? And he had the opportunity to meet with the chief, right? The chief of the island, the head honcho, the guy in charge, right? And he went and had dinner at his house, and the chief had a father who was sick. And the father, I'm sure at some point, came walking through, and Paul was like, who's that? And he's like, it's my dad, right? And he's like, what's wrong with him? Paul's and the chief, I'm sure something along the lines of, was like, he's sick. He's got the Malta fever, right? And there's no cure, right? There's nothing he can do. Right? And I'm sure at that point, Paul probably smiled. I'm sure he probably thought, he asked, he said, can I have a moment with him? Can I talk to him? Right? And he went and he prayed for his father, and his father was healed. And then word got out through the whole island about this was happening, and Paul and people started coming with all sorts of diseases and things, and Paul was praying for them, and they were all getting healed. And there was salvation that came to this whole island because of this storm, right? Because of this situation, because Paul was in prison, because of the storm came and shipwrecked them, and then he got bit by the viper. Because of those things, it led to something that was good. See, Paul could have easily let his circumstances control his outcome. Yes, but he kept the right perspective. He kept his perspective on God. Even when the odds were against him. You guys, and the truth is, we're going to go through life, and the odds will be against us at times. Yes, Romans, this is a verse that in this last year I've become very acquainted with. I've had to tell myself this many times. Romans 8:28. It says, "And we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love him, to those who are called according to his purpose." You guys, the odds might seem against you when you're going through the storm, when you wash up on the shores of Malta, when you find yourself in a situation you never thought you'd be in. Yes, but God can, let me tell you, no matter how messed up it is, God can use whatever the situation is for good. He can. For those who love him and those who are called according to his purposes. And let me tell you, you are called. You are called. Right? What's happened, what's scarred you, what's the seasons where you've been hurt beyond belief, right? Those don't define you. Right? You are called according to his purpose. And he can use it. I promise you. I promise you. He can use the ugliest situations, right? My friend who I was egging that house with, right? We ended up I found him, right? I found him and our other friend and we ended up they were on the other side of the street. That's why I couldn't find them. But we ended up jumping houses all the way down, getting yelled at by a bunch of people, but we ended up not getting caught, and so we got through. But you guys, that story, I use as an illustration. That wasn't really Malta for me, you guys. I've washed up on the shores of Malta a couple times in life, you guys, and my friend, you guys, that friend, he was my best friend, you guys, and we grew up together. First day of 6th grade, Parkway Middle School. It was like 4th period, right? Mr. Henderson's class, it was history. I didn't like history. But I sat in the back of class, and this like goofy little Mexican kid comes like, "Okay, sit there." And we just like hit it after that. And we were like so close. From that moment on, first day of 6th grade, right? I remember like it was yesterday. We were just like best friends, right? And we were so close all the way through. We did so many stupid things together, right? We were both actually decently innocent in 6th grade, and then towards the middle of junior high, we started getting in a bunch of trouble, and then towards the end of junior high, we started getting in a lot of trouble. We would go and get drunk and go and to parties and go and break into cars and steal a bunch of things, and we're just getting worse and worse. And then, like, let me tell you, it was crazy. We both ended up coming to church and getting saved. And we both got baptized the same day. You guys, and I think about this, I'm like, man, like, it's crazy that the events of like my best friend, like we were so close and we did so much together, right? And he was my best man at my wedding, and I was his best man at his wedding. And you guys, three years ago, roughly, he took his own life. And at that point, right, I found myself on the shores of Malta, right? I found myself in a place I never thought. Right, let me tell you, if you knew Will, he was the funniest kid, right? He was the funniest guy, always a clown, always the happiest, right? But he had this depression that he wasn't sharing. He kept it inside. You guys, and I found myself on the shores of Malta. I had a decision, right, to either let my circumstances, let this situation, right, let it choose my outcome, or I can choose my perspective. To choose the right perspective, right? If there's ever a time I've asked God why, if I've asked God, how can you use this for good? Right? If there's ever a time, it was that season. And I recognized that I was going nowhere fast. right? And I just thought, okay, God, I don't see how, but I'm just going to trust you. I don't see how this any part of this situation is going to be good, but I'm just going to trust. I took a step back. You guys, would you believe me if I've told you I've been in worse places. I've had worse things happen. I've had worse struggles happen in my life. You guys, I've had worse things happen to me. You guys, and if you let your circumstances, if you let the cards that were dealt to you in life choose your outcome, it's never going to be good. It's never going to be good. You got to choose. You got to choose to have the right perspective. You guys, I think back, right? Or real quick, Paul actually thinks back after these things happen, right? And he says this. He says, "Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel." Right? He takes these horrible situations. He says, to take all these bad things, right? It has actually been good, right? He says it's actually, for the most part, it has been good. He gives the attitude of, I'm glad that it happened. I'm glad that it happened. You guys, and let me tell you, if you've gone through a storm, I really hope none of you really go through hard storms, right? Because it sucks, right? It sucks, those things that happen. But I think back to the storms I've gone through and the storms I'm going through, right? And honestly, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't obviously I didn't want to go through those storms. Of course I didn't want my best friend to die. Right? Of course I didn't want bad things to happen, storms. Of course not. But looking back at it now, I am who I am today because of it. God has molded me into the man I am today. The reason why I'm standing here today, the reason why I'm still here today is because God has used these storms. He's used it.